Hey everyone, I'm Travis Wright, and you're listening to I'm a Fan Of, your show for music, comedy, and more. As always, if you're a musician, a comedian, or just someone that does something interesting, please reach out to me on Instagram at TravisCanListen. You can find me on Facebook at I'm a Fan Of, or you can reach out to me through the website at I'mAFanOfPod.com. If you just enjoy the show, please follow me there as well, and like and subscribe to the podcast. This episode, I wanted to bring on a man that I've just always had a great time hanging out with, Cory Phifer, the drummer for the band Brave Little Howl, which, as you know, I love very, very much. They're a fantastic band from here in the DFW area in Texas. You should definitely check them out. But man, every time I've gone to one of their shows or just, helped them with a project or something, and I get to hang out with Cory, I've always just had a great conversation. He's just a really fun, genuine guy that is just always fun to chat with. So I thought, man, I got to get him on the podcast so you guys can kind of experience a little bit of that as well. And I don't know what to say. If you ever see him at a show, please go chat with him. He is fun, friendly, and he's always a good hang. And that's what I was hoping you guys would get to experience with this episode. So let's go ahead and get into it. This is Cory Phifer from Brave Little Howl. Enjoy. The I'm a Fan Of podcast, music, comedy, and more. Dude, It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, man.
We hang out maybe 4 times a year, 5 times a year, it feels like.
Yes.
But and that was even fewer times with COVID and the pandemic. But great to see you again, man.
Good to see you too.
And right off the bat, I want to get into it because when I gave you a hug, I noticed how nice you smell. And then you started to go on about how you're a mixologist with your scent.
Yeah, it's true.
Please tell me what you're doing, man.
So for a while,
talk into that mic a little bit. Yeah. There you go.
So for a while, I did this thing. I guess it was just out of cheapness and not having a lot of money. I really liked the smell of watermelon and cucumber women's deodorant from a dollar store.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I was really into it. So then years later, I got into patchouli oil and stuff like that.
Can I tell you before you go too far? I've been wearing my wife's female Mitchum, which I'm pretty sure is that same scent because I know it's pink and green.
Yeah.
She was like, what kind of deodorant do you want? I was just, pick me up what you use.
Yeah, it smells good. I mean, it really does.
So anyway, you went to patchouli.
So I went to patchouli for a while, and then over the years, I just kind of dabbled. This is so dumb, but I dabbled with different colognes and smells.
Yeah.
And finally, I landed on this. It's like a knockoff of Polo Black.
Okay.
Called Classic Match. You can get it at Walmart for $7.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also got this knockoff of Tom Ford's Tobacco and Vanilla because I saw that Harry Styles wore it.
Nice.
Not that I'm nothing against Harry Styles. It's not like I'm trying to model that or whatever, but yeah, so now I just use both of those at the same time.
But Harry Styles does look like he would smell incredible.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I look at him
totally.
and I'm like, yeah, he smells lovely.
He would smell like a bunch of leather-bound books. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And mahogany.
So what do? Is it like sprays, like one, two?
So I do the spray on the neck, and the pressure points or whatever they call those, the pulse points. And then I do the oils on the wrist, and then I do just like a dab on the chest.
You have a great ratio because I didn't think it was overpowering.
Oh, thank you.
I only caught it when I came in for the hug, and I was like, hey, nice.
What's really funny is that all the guys in the band, they're always like, man, you smell so good all the time. And my wife is every once in a while, she'll say, oh, why do you smell so good? And then that's when I lean in for the kiss.
Yeah, and you're just like, that's right, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
You knew what you married.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I love colognes, but my wife is very sensitive to migraines, and smell is one of the things and she's so particular about which ones are going to give her a headache. And I feel like I miss out because it's like, since we've been together, I really don't wear colognes or anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it might be for the better because I definitely would be the person to overuse it. I might spray a wall in the air and just walk straight.
Yeah. So my wife's the same way. I went through a phase of burning patchouli incense for a long time for no particular reason. I just love the smell of it. Mm-hmm. And she's really sensitive to smell as well. So I was like, well, okay, I guess I can't burn anything. But then I walk into the house one day and she's burning vanilla scented candles or stuff that smells like cookies and stuff. Delicious. And then so one day I was like, after we recorded in Denton at Redwood, they had Palo Santo wood chunks or whatever that they would light and like help just like relax the mood.
Dude,
and
that's
everything.
a badass studio thing right there.
Yeah. And so we're all in the room, like everybody that's just kind of chilling, waiting to record their parts, just mellow and take it in. And so I thought, oh man, that'd be cool. So without asking permission, she's just sitting there. She just sees me lighting the wood on fire.
You're just staring at her across the living room like, I'm trying something.
I'm waiting for her to say something. So I'm sitting there and it's like finally gets to the point, it's, embering and stuff. And I just kind of set it in this little antique silver dish that my brother-in-law got me. It's really cool. It's like pure silver. It was from like some Hilton in Japan or something that he found in Dallas at some vintage shop. So I just set it in there. It was like a perfect little dish for it. I mean, immediately the fumes started coming off of that. And she's like, you can't, I was like, okay. So yeah, anyways, so she's pretty sensitive to me. Yeah. I can relate.
Dude, I noticed now that it's like, I think I like it when people have overpowering colognes or perfumes.
Really?
Like, I wouldn't recommend it, right? Because I know other people hate it, but it's like every now and then I'll get in an elevator and there's like an older lady who's got way too much perfume on, and something about that I'm like,
it is comforting in some weird way.
I don't know if it's like one of my grandparents was that way or what it is, but something about it triggers something in me. And my first thought is like, that's way too strong. But my second thought is, breathe it in.
Take it in. Yeah, but the smell that I don't like is whenever
B.O. I know, I'm there. I know. No,
when somebody like puts on a really strong scent like perfume, but they're also a smoker.
Ooh,
and they
bad.
try to, you know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
weird. Like everybody can already tell you're a smoker. I don't know what you're going for.
Dude, I waited tables for a long time, and that was the service industry move. Right, because you only had a few minutes to get the cigarette down anyway in the middle of your shift. There's no real breaks, right?
Right.
And, there was always a couple servers. It's like one of them would run out back. You'd watch their section for a minute. They'd just slam a cigarette, slam a Red Bull, and then it was like that old Bath and Body Works spray. You know what I'm talking about? And they would just be like, all over. Yeah. And they come back in. You're just like, Jesus, what is that? And no, I know that smell well. No, mine has to be like, it feels like it's an older woman who probably has money. Yeah. And it's like a nice perfume. But maybe like she just lost her sense of smell and she puts on way too much now.
That's funny.
Yeah. And again, like I know I'm like, it's overpowering. It's too strong. But something about me is like, it's not bad though. It's nice.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's nice. She spent some money on that one.
Right.
I've realized I've never talked to you about drumming at all.
That's true.
And we've never had a conversation about playing drums. And that's how I know you.
No.
But, I don't think I've ever got to tell you that I love your drumming style.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
And it's very, I realized I love drummers that serve songs very well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have never seen you once try to be a flashy player of any kind, but I'm always going like, oh, that was nice.
Oh,
that was nice.
Thank you.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So part of that is lack of talent. I'm going to be honest. But the other, there's times in my mind, like I'll sit there and I'm like, I'll watch some drummer just do like a really tasty fill. And I'm like, oh man, if I could pull that off. And every band that I've been in, it's like, it doesn't serve. And so I was having a conversation. My brother, he also plays drums, and he kind of, I guess from watching Big Brother do it, I don't know, but he kind of got the bug to do it too. And we were talking one day, and the philosophy just came, like, kind of fumbled out of my mouth. And it came from a weird source. Not, I shouldn't say weird, but just kind of like outside of the box for most musicians. But back in the day, I was watching a documentary or like this little promo video for the album by Audio Adrenaline called Bloom.
Okay.
And their drummer, who is from Missouri, was playing with them at that time. And he said that he learned one of his greatest influences was this old dude that he watched play at this local gig or something like that, and started like really following him and everything else. And he goes, man, I want to play like that guy and everything. And he said, he went up to him and he was like, what's your philosophy or thought process through working with drums and playing drums for the song. And he literally said, like, building a song is like building a house. And if you have a good, strong foundation, then you have a good frame that can follow that, and you let everybody else do their part. As a drummer, that should be your part in the song, and serving the song and building that foundation and kind of framing it out and letting it just kind of go towards that. And so ever since then, that's what I kind of clung to. And my playing has really been about, I want to show kids that they can have fun while they do this stuff. And hopefully they can see that they can do it too. And then they get into it. As a matter of fact, there's a kid that he's in a band right now, and he was from my church back home in Oklahoma, and he's playing in a national touring band that is.
Oh, that's cool.
They're actually getting ready to open up on 4 dates for My Morning Jacket.
Oh, wow. What's the name of the band?
Wildorado.
Okay. All right.
And
I'll check it out.
I gave him like a drum set and like told him like, hey, this is like, showed him just a very rudimentary 5-minute thing. I'm not saying I'm the guy that like he's the reason.
No, he owes everything to you.
Right, no.
Everything. I hope he's listening right now and knows, like, cut a little bit of the check. That's all we're saying. No,
but it's just cool to see like how you can, like, I think that's my favorite thing with art in general, and why I like music is because it can influence, impact a person in a certain way. If it's, this song really connected with me because of this, I get all the time. Like it's, I was talking to John Ruffalo, or however you say his name, from the Cliffs, and Death Ray Davies, and Apples in Stereo. We were talking one day after we played a show with them down in Deep Ellum, and he was like, "Man, it's just so much fun to watch you, and you said very nice words." I go, you know what's funny is that everybody always tells me like how much fun it is to watch me sing and wave and everything else. Nobody ever tells me how good I am, which I'm okay with. Like, I'm okay with just being in that lane of like, I can play a 4/4 beat and I know my lane and I'm okay with being there. And I think what really kind of developed my playing of, especially with Brave Little Howl, was not only the music I listened to, but like working with Mackenzie Smith in Denton at Redwood, and having him, like watching him process the drum parts and saying, "Hey, why don't you try this or try that?" And in every part of my journey, even when we worked with the guys in Tennessee on our EP, like there was different things that we tried. A lot of it did not land, like it just didn't work. But trying to exercise those muscles outside that are still within my wheelhouse and my ability and my musicality, because I'm not.
I'll give you more credit than you give yourself, though, because that's a typical musician thing. Because what I will say is, knowing the band, I feel like I know y'all's band deeper than the average listener, just because we got to work together on some things, and knowing how y'all's songs are written now, how like Mark or Billy come in with different ideas, and then Josh and Clay or whoever like start to blend theirs in as well. You're essentially playing drums for like 3 different bands. You know what I mean? Depending on what style we're going with that day. Yeah. And that's where I think your talent comes in, is your ability to kind of like read the room, so to speak, of the song. Because I mean, even songs as simple as like Beautiful, right? That's a very slow jam, pretty song, and it would be so easy to overplay on that. It's like it's such a slow halftime feel that you could really screw it up. And I started thinking about drums that way after I saw I don't know if he had multiple drummers, but I guess one of the main drummers for Michael Jackson for his live band, and he's just playing like Smooth Criminal, right? And he's just playing it to like a karaoke track or whatever, there's no vocals or anything happens, so you can really hear everything he's doing. Not a lot of flash. Like the guy's just in the pocket, but you start watching him more closely and you're like, Jesus, he's so tight. Like it's such a tight drum beat, Right. And you realize it's like, man, that guy doesn't have to do a fill and it still sounds really difficult. And I've started really getting into that kind of I've started really appreciating that style of drumming more, where it's not a fill, it's like I'm holding this groove so that everything else can happen.
Yeah, I think that's what's fun with Brave Little Howl is that like I'm able to. It is definitely like there's plenty of times.
Dude, you got so many strong opinions in that band that you have to.
I mean, it's interesting because
I love all those guys, but I mean, like when they bring, I can tell when they bring an idea, they're very passionate about it.
Yeah,
and I can imagine there's a couple heated like. We're not doing this. It's got to be this way.
Well,
I will quit the band.
There was one song that we played that's on the full length, and we've played it hundreds and hundreds of times. Mm-hmm. And then for whatever reason, we played it Twilight Fort Worth, and this goes down like in the annals of Brave Little Howl history. But we haven't played that song since then.
Really?
And part of it was because there was something happened where it's a downbeat that has to be felt, and it's based off of Billy's guitar pattern. And for whatever reason, no matter how many times we tried to hit it on that spot, we couldn't never get it. And so then it created some tension on stage. And at the end of the show, Josh comes over to me and he was like, dude, what happened? I was like, it was all Billy. And then Billy's like, no, I did this. And we counted it off. We even, looked at each other, mouthed the count off and everything. But I think what's fun is that over the years, like there has been more and more awareness for how the songs are structured and stuff. And a lot of the times, I gotta be honest, maybe some would be surprised me saying this, but Mark has always been the one that's like, dude, just trust Fife. He knows what he's doing. And then there's other times where we do come into it and I'm like, guys, you're asking me to do something. This is not my style. Like there are times where I finally had to say like, I'm not, this is not what I want to do. This is where we're going to go to. And then there's even a song as of recently that I was just not crazy about the drum part on that did not make the record. And I was like, I think I actually am the reason why it didn't get recorded because I went a totally different direction and I was kind of like okay with it. And I just kind of like, I didn't phone it in, but I was like trying something different. And so I think that's what's fun is that while there are strong opinions, as we've gotten older and as we've gotten more familiar with each other with the writing of this the process and all that, there is that space still that allows everybody to have their parts. And then as we work through those songs, there's kind of like an unspoken thing that just chemistry that happens and it all collides. And then we're like, did we write that song too fast? Like it just came together too easily. And then there's other times we're like, man, there's something that's still not there. And so we'll listen to the demos on our own and like come back to the song and try to revisit. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it still is. It's still a blast.
I was very nervous for y'all when y'all were doing the latest record, when y'all were recording it, because I'd heard so many different versions of some of those songs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was just thinking in my head, like, I've been in a studio enough to know, like, if you guys get up there and perform on a live stage, you know exactly what you'd like to do. But now when you're going to a studio and you're having to record separate pieces and you're not doing it as a full band typically, right?
Right.
That you're like trying to grab that little bit of magic that happens live.
Yeah.
So difficult.
Yeah.
And then just all the little elements, right? It's like just, is my guitar amp going to sound the way I want it to when it's going through this microphone and this preamp? And then when they mix it this way and this compression is like, is it just going to change, you know? And I was just so curious how it was all going to come out, but I'm really happy with how it all came. Like, I
Good.
felt, it was so weird. I'd heard them so many times, I almost felt like it was mine. It's like, don't y'all fuck up my song.
That's funny. Yeah, it was interesting because that's one thing that I will continuously celebrate and champion in the band with is the meticulous sound of Mark hearing something on a guitar that I'm just not hearing at all. And Josh can hear something. Josh is a music nerd and he can like go, I think the frequency on the megahertz of the C is this. Yeah. He just did it the other day.
If we could get like 10 more milliseconds on the delay, please.
Yeah, exactly.
That would really solve it.
I mean, I know it sounds like I'm picking on, but it's so awesome because he can hear that. And it's like, man, we're having like, even in live shows, like there's a feedback that's coming through and the sound guy's like struggling. He's rushing around. You see him, he's sweating like crazy. And Josh is like, try channel 2 on the 10 megahertz signal at the, and he always has the answer.
Yeah.
And then you have Bill that also comes in with his opinions.
Well, what I've gathered from talking to
so
Bill
great.
is Bill is just like an encyclopedia of like music knowledge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of just bands and songs, and just he pulls out these songs or whatever, these references where I'm like, what? I have never heard of this. He's like, yeah, you need to go check it out, man. Like, it's pretty good. And I'm like, okay. But like talking about Mark and like picking out those sounds, those are all the things that you don't appreciate ever, because when you do it correctly, right? When he finds what he wants, you never think like, oh, I'm so glad he boosted the mid-range 2 notches. Right. You know what I mean? Like nobody sees that. Nobody hears that.
Right.
But if he were to pull it out, you would just be like, what sounds off?
Right.
Something sounds off. And I don't know what it is. And that's like, that's what's so hard about trying to record anything, man, is like you really have to have an ear for it. I went to school for audio engineering.
Oh.
And it was not long before I found out, like, man, I just don't have the ear for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, mixing something like a podcast is easy, but when it comes to like mixing an album, it's like, man, you can watch every YouTube video, you can have all the technical ability you want, and it still comes down to like, do you just hear that? You know?
Right.
And I realized I just don't. Like, I know when I like it and when I don't, but I don't know how to get it there.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
that's exactly what I feel like every time but when we go through the mixes of a batch of songs, I'm just like, kick doesn't sound too punchy, I think, like, or whatever. And they're like, what about this guitar and this and on the chorus and this? And I'm like,
I know you don't do it this way, but I picture you just walking through, just like with a beer, and just be like, kick sucks.
yeah,
Something about the kick, it really sucks.
I even before we sent everything off to get mastered on the last album, I was working and had all these files sitting there, and I was just listening to them between jobs and between appointments. And I was like, man, something is just I'm not hearing what they're hearing, like sonically, like there's something that's off. And I realized that my ears were clogged. And so I popped my ears, and I was like, sorry guys, never mind anything I said. Take it all back. Just put it to the trash. But that's the thing that I think it's awesome, is that I know that I can rely on those guys for that. Mm-hmm. They can rely on me hopefully they can rely on me to be the anchor, to hold those songs and do my part and just do what I do. And then also be able to hear them do their thing, and like also have the things that they can do and contribute to the feedback for the songs. And so I think that's what was fun at working at Cloudland and getting that album out, was that just all of these things, even with Cole, like with his new, the new guy coming in and doing his thing and his input, and Clay just throwing in comments here and there. It's like everybody has like that. It's just crazy how cool it works together, because there's not a single, I can literally say this with 100% certainty, there's not a single guy in that band outside of me that will say that is not like just fighting to be in that spotlight. There's not a single one. And so I think that's why all of us are kind of geared towards that, but it's also fun to have the music nerds in the band that like really meticulous with it and go, okay. And then when I hear it, I'm like, oh, dude, I knew I could trust you.
Well, and what makes it fun as a listener is I can tell that each of you have a style that if you had your final say, that the whole band would sound like that style that you love.
Yeah.
Right. Which wouldn't be very good. It's like the amount of times I've heard Mark talk about Pavement. It's like Mark would just have another band like Pavement right now. Right.
Right.
And it's just kind of that ability to be like, yeah, that's my favorite stuff, but this is our band and we're not playing that. And it's like, that's kind of why you need all those stubborn opinions and different styles coming in. And then it ends up sounding totally unique, And I think a lot of bands struggle with that, because you get stuck in this zone of, I love this music, I play this music all the time, I want to play something like that. And the reality is like y'all's music doesn't really sound like anything that y'all probably really love. It's probably not too close to some of your favorite albums.
For me, no.
Exactly, right?
Like at all.
But that's what you need. It's like that's how you get something original, is pulling from those different ideas.
Yeah.
But you got to be able to pull your ego out of the way to do that.
Well, I think that's what's funny with, like, a lot of people always ask me, like, because I did, so Cole had his own band for a while, right? And I played with him for like a year and a half. I thought I would just try to stretch the country muscle a little bit. Yes, other drummers I'm sorry, I don't know how to play the train beat. I just can't. I've tried and I've tried.
The train beat.
Yeah, so it's the classic thing in country music,
like just on the snare. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whatever reason, I can do a lot of other things, but that is one beat that I have sat down for hours and tried to get it, and I just can't. I don't know what it is. My kick will go on the downbeat instead of the upbeat, and like I can't get my.
You're
all
just
that
not
stuff.
hearing it, man.
I'm not hearing it. And I don't feel it.
There are so many guitar parts where I'm just like, I don't get it, and then it's like randomly one day driving down the road, I'll hear it finally for the correct way, and I'm like, oh
yeah,
oh.
Well, and to be honest, like there's a lot of music that I've played over my time of playing drums that I've never had to use that beat, so I've never even entertained that idea.
Yeah,
but even playing with Cole, like going into it, I was like, man, I don't know if I can do country music, like, and he was just so different with his style of country music. So I was able just to lock in, just 4 on the floor, just keep it tasty and nice and in the pocket. But everybody always asks me, like, a lot, like even when I was playing in other bands before, like every band that I've ever been in has not been the band that of the style of music that I listen to.
Oh.
So
what is the style?
So
what band would you? What is your dream band?
Dream band?
Yeah, Brave Little Howl. You guys already make it.
Yeah,
you're super successful, and now you get to start your little side project.
My dream, honestly, is if I could sit down and actually work through the catalog of Appleseed Cast.
I have no idea what that is.
It's a Midwestern emo band.
Okay, all right.
And they're from Kansas, and dude, they're just super dreamy, shoegazery kind of stuff.
What's it called?
The Appleseed Cast.
The Appleseed Cast.
They've been around for a long, long time, and they had a drummer that he's so good. Low Level Owl Volumes 1 and 2, really, and what's the third album? But those 3 albums together, there's a third one, I can't remember it right now. They all like really, like when I was trying to form what my drumming was going to be, was from that.
Okay.
But the music that I listen to is stuff like that, and then I have there's this band called Mom Jeans and Michael Sarah Palin. There's a lot of metal bands that I listen to, Every Time I Die and stuff like that, and I listen to quite a bit of hip hop, and so like all of that stuff. And I've played in folk band, I've played in a country band, I've played in whatever Brave Little Howl is, and so I think even with Southern Sea, when I played with them, I was listening to a lot of Modest Mouse, and I was really channeling Modest Mouse a lot. And I think I still do quite a bit.
I can see that, yeah.
R.I.P. to the drummer.
Oh, he died?
Yeah, lost to cancer. But yeah, so I think that's what's funny is that like you can hear Mark's Pavement and Dinosaur Jr. and 90s stuff coming out of him. You can hear the Damon Gerardo singer-songwriter stuff that comes out of Billy. You can hear the stuff that the classical training and stuff that comes out of Josh. And I'm not sure what Clay listens to, really.
Clay, oh my gosh, what is like that? Oh, fuck. He was talking to me about a really popular, it's like a super mega popular country act. They're like brothers.
Avett Brothers?
Yeah. He was talking about loving them for a hot minute. I don't know if that's like his favorite, but I just remember him having a conversation, and I think one of us said something like, I don't like that, and he's like, what are you talking about? Like, and he went in. So I kind of see that with him,
Yeah, he likes them and like a band called Joseph.
Okay.
And then Cole is country through and through, and but he can also just play whatever.
Dude, Cole cracks me up because he's like, what are we doing? Sure. I'm just here to play, man.
Yeah.
Tell me what notes? All right, I guess. Fuck it.
Yeah. What's funny with Cole is that I've known that guy for I've known Mark the longest, but I've known Cole was actually a roadie for a band that Mark and I were in, where he would actually drive the tour van. Well, I say tour van, the band van, back it in, help us load up, do merch and all that stuff. And then we didn't really hang out or talk. And then I played in a country band with him, and then I would see him every once in a while. And then now he's the bass player in the band. And I think what is Cole's what you just said is perfect. Like that's exactly who Cole is.
Yeah.
Like he's just.
It makes me angry how carefree he is.
I know, right?
Because I could never be that way.
yeah.
I'm just like, you don't get to be this happy. Like,
and man, he's hilarious too. He's so
dude,
funny.
I remember when he came out to Cloudland and we were doing that just one series, right? That you weren't. I think you were. Did you have COVID then? Is that what it was?
My cast. I was still broken.
That's right. That's right. And that was, I think, my first time really meeting him. And it's like we were having this, like we were laughing and we were like, dude, shut up. We're trying to record. Like, stop making everyone laugh, man. And because it's like, dude, he's just rapid fire. Like, I would love to see him at like an open mic comedy night and just see what happens. So because I don't know if he has anything that's funny, but he's got that energy for the room.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's actually he just told me at practice 2 weeks ago that he's going to start hosting a trivia night at Native Station in Roche City. And I was
perfect
like,
for that.
Dude, that is so your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And he's like, a mic and I get to talk to people? Yes, please.
Well, because he's quick too.
Yes,
that's what a lot of brand new comics, when I watch them, that's one of the skill sets they struggle with is it's hard for them to just quickly react with something clever.
Yeah.
Because that's not something you can really practice a lot. Like that comes from years of him just hanging around other dudes and being that way. Or like maybe you hung out with the older guys when you were kids, like your dads and stuff, who were just ripping on each other all the time and had those quick, fast one-liners. And he's definitely got that down. It's real.
He's also a fan of comedy. So he has a friend that tried out for Saturday Night Live.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like all of his circle of friends, like if I remember correctly, he was also a kind of a theater kid. And so he did like a bunch of like
that adds up.
Comedy stuff in that too. And so with him being on stage and being in front of a mic, that's also why he was such a fun frontman to play with. Like, because he would control a crowd like no other. And but it's also funny too, because while we're on stage, especially, there's a memory I have playing at Sundown, and all of his friends are over to the left of the, like stage left of the.
This was like y'all's first show back.
Yeah.
Because we were sitting next to those friends, and we were literally like, I got a great picture of like that whole show. We were just sitting there like staring at the backside of you guys, basically. Yeah. But it was still like the most fun. And so much of it was just his bullshit antics going on. The stuff that the rest of the crowd couldn't even hear.
Right. Yeah. And so that's just what you saw of Cole that night is who Cole is. Like, that's it. And what's cool too, though, is that he's also very compassionate. He's very attentive, and he's willing to help out. Like, the talks that I've had with him a couple of times, and it's just like, I think that's the other thing. I just fell into a group of, I'm very fortunate to be in a group of guys that just, we care for one another. And I think that's the other thing that I really enjoy about playing with Brave Little Howl. Like last night, three of us got together to watch the stars. Bill's traveling, and, with Cole having his kids and stuff like that, he was tied up or whatever. But if we get a chance, we hang out with one another, and it's just fun. That's the thing. I think I've said it before. I think I've told you the thing that I really like about this band, outside of the really digging the music, is that like it is a brotherhood. It's not like gym class or football season's over and we don't see anybody until the next album's together. Like we're in it. We're in each other's lives. Like texting, calling each other, checking each other. And even when I was down with COVID or had my leg issue and my knee thing and everything like that, Mark and Josh were coming over. Josh even mowed my lawn
No
once.
way.
Yes.
I can't picture Josh mowing a lawn at all.
I think it was the last time he did it.
Really?
No. No, I know he does. He's great. He's a great family man. He takes care of his family well. Yeah.
It's just hard picturing a guy who plays piano so well, like push mowing a lawn.
I know.
You know
right?
what I mean?
Yes.
I don't know. Something about that is like he doesn't mow anything. What are you talking about? He's not going to put those hands on anything. Yeah. He's got to tickle those keys, man.
He doesn't need working hands.
Oh my God. It's so true. Dude, talking about Cole being a big comedy fan, I didn't realize how big of a comedy fan you are, or are,
oh,
rather.
Man. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you saw comedy in any form, like video or in person or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
What was it?
Oh, yeah. So growing up, once, I don't remember the exact moment when I first got the glimpse of it, but I distinctly remember sneaking out of my room at night. It was a Saturday night. It was back in the 80s during Saturday Night Live. And I snuck behind the couch and I just sat back there and I was watching over the edge of the couch. My parents were watching and stuff. And somebody said something on there and I started laughing. And I got caught, was sent back to my room, was in trouble, and was like, you can't watch this, it's too edgy or whatever. Yeah. And ever since then, dude, like that was, I guess that was the comedy bug. And I've always kind of chased it. Like,
it was just one of the skits too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then after that, like I fell in love with Weird Al Yankovic for a while.
Yeah.
And then I found Eddie Murphy. And then my dad showed me, Richard Pryor. And then after that, like when I got older, like to shame, my first live comedy show was Tom Segura at Hyenas.
First of all, that's a great one because you will never see him at a club that small again. He's so massive now.
Right.
The first time I saw Tom Segura was at the Majestic Theater downtown.
Oh, nice.
And that was beautiful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I had watched his stand-up on Netflix and I listened to his podcast a lot, but it still just didn't compare to his live stand-up performance. Like,
oh my gosh.
There's so much of what he does that will never translate to the camera.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's just an energy in that room that he provides.
What's funny is that I think it was a Pandora station because I would listen to like Pandora comedy. And
yeah, same, dude.
Like
if we took a road trip, I'd put in a comic that I like and it would just shuffle through all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, I miss that about Pandora. Like, that's one thing Spotify does not do well. Nothing else does it as good as Pandora does.
Right,
yeah,
right.
For that.
And so the very first time I was White Girls with Cornrows, it came on like a bit from that.
Yeah.
And I was like, who is this guy? So I went and downloaded the album or something like that. And then I was like, then there was like another one that had, like, there was, because he has the album cover where he looks like Michael Jackson off of Thriller, I think it is, or whatever. And so, anyways, that's when I found him, and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy. And then it like led me on a natural trail to like all these alt comics and stuff. And then I was working with this guy, and I showed him Tom Segura, and then he was like, hey, he's coming to Dallas. And I was like, we gotta go.
It was Hyenas Dallas, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's club is always going to hold a little special place to me because I've watched so many good shows there, and it was the first club that I was going to, and imagining him on a stage that small, because that probably only holds like 250 people,
right?
And the stage itself is maybe 10 feet wide. Yeah, that would be incredible.
It was insane, and I think so. After all of that, when I got married, like it's been a tradition for my wife and I with Saturday Night Live. Every time it's live, we watch it. We there for a while. We went through a phase of like made it really cute and like had milk and cookies and stuff. Now it's like, oh well, it's time for SNL,
Yeah.
And so it's every time. It's like we've been together for 15 years or so.
Jeez, so y'all have gone through several casts now.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
because it's like SNL. It's so easy for people to be like, the new cast sucks, and it's like the new cast doesn't suck. You're just unwilling to change.
Yeah.
But because it's like every generation thinks their generation of SNL is the best.
Yep.
And it's like, sure, there's times where it dips a little, but there's always some great skits and some great cast members.
Well, I read an interesting point of view on it was a kind of like the same argument you just posed. And it said that what a lot of people they tend to forget about Saturday Night Live is that it's not a comedy show. It's a variety show.
Oh.
And so if you lock it into a comedy show, of course you're going to be disappointed because it's not ever delivering the laughs at the joke rate that it's supposed to, of like I think it's like 3 jokes every minute or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever that pacing is. And it doesn't do that. But what it does is because they have the songs and they have the sketches, and you have a chorus line that comes out in one sketch and you have another one that does this, and then they have just Weekend Update is where all the comedians do their their stand-up bits right there, right? But what's cool about that too is that it's introduced us to a bunch of comics that have blown up, and a bunch of people that you didn't know that were there before. And I've always wanted to go. Like my wife and I went to New York on our 15th year anniversary, and we went to 30 Rock, but we didn't ever get the gamble to go into the SNL. But we did go to ASCAT, and we did go to Comedy Cellar. And when we were at Comedy Cellar, it was Joe Mackey was playing. And
dude, that's on like my list of I I want to plan a trip to New York just to go watch like a week's worth of shows there.
Oh, geez,
you know what I mean?
so
Because
awesome.
It's just such a. I didn't know anything about it until I watched Louis' TV show.
Yeah.
And then that I was like, Comedy Cellar, huh? And then I started noticing all these clips I was watching online are the same stage, and it's like, oh, this thing. And then you research the history, and you're like, fuck, this is an incredible stage.
Yeah.
So you got to go watch one night there.
Yeah, so we went one night and saw, like, it was one night we went over to ASCAT, and John Early was there and a bunch of other people. Man, it was so fun.
How big is that room? Because I can't ever tell how it is on the videos, you know?
ASCAT's pretty big. Well, it's probably about a little bit bigger than Hyenas.
Okay.
So you had like 3 or 4 rows back, and so it probably holds about 400 people maybe.
Okay.
And then the Comedy Cellar is just like a bar, man. So
That's cool.
You walk in and it's just like you sit down and it's just like tight quarters.
So it's like 50 seats or?
Probably 100,
Okay.
120 maybe.
That's awesome.
And it's really, really fun because they I can't remember who our drop-in was, but they had a drop-in.
Mm-hmm.
A lot's happened since then, so forgive me. But even just seeing freaking Joe Mackey there live after seeing him on Last Comic Standing and doing his thing, that's how we got introduced to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so then being able to go see him and then seeing Colin Quinn was there too.
Oh, that would be great.
It was so much fun. And
well, because
I would go back.
The SNL crew, like people forget that it's like, yeah, a lot of them come out of sketch, but a lot of them are stand-ups and they're really funny. And they just don't get to exercise that muscle on SNL. And so when they do hit a stand-up stage, you're like, Jesus, it's a totally different beast. And so I always hate when I hear someone who's like, oh, this new one sucks. And it's like, does it suck?
Right.
Or did you just get like locked into your own little, like, I like this type of comedy, and if it's not that, I don't like it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think that's what's interesting to me with it for sure is that there is there was a study that was done with on, I think it was like on NPR or something. And they said that a lot of times with music, art in general, that once people get to like 30, 35, they stop seeking that out.
Mm-hmm.
And they are typically the ones that don't try the new restaurants, don't go to the new bands that are playing at the new venue or exploring anything else outside of that. And that you kind of do there's a familiarity there that you get locked in with and you romanticize it the whole time. Now, there's some very close friends of mine back in Oklahoma that really, really like the Farley era and Adam Sandler, all that stuff. I think it's great. It was funny. A lot of it doesn't age very well.
No.
But I think even still, I can appreciate that. I can still appreciate the old stuff with Bill Murray and even in the weaker days of SNL. But even in the newer stuff, like what they're doing and what they're pushing now is really kind of going with Sarah Squirm and her being as a hire, like such a out of left field. Like she's so out there. And to have her being represented on national TV and for them to take that risk, even with comedy in that way, I think it's fantastic.
Dude, it's awesome. I think the biggest thing that hurts SNL is just the way that we all consume stuff now, right? Because most people aren't doing what you and your wife get to do, which is sit down and watch it, right? Like watch a whole show progress from beginning to end, because that's the experience, right? Instead, I think they're just watching a skit, right? You're watching something on TikTok, Instagram, whatever. You're just watching the quick, 5-minute thing instead of the whole show.
Right.
And I think when you sit down and you soak in that whole experience of the show, like the great monologue, the band, whoever's on that week, that's what helps you, because it's like if you just came into a comedy show right when your favorite comic jumped on stage, it's going to be okay. But there's something about the opener who warms up the crowd and get a drink, loosen up a little, I think that's what's kind of kicking SNL in the nuts right now is people don't want to sit down for, what is it, hour and a half?
Yeah, typically.
People don't want to sit down for that anymore. And it's like, yeah, but just do it, man. Like, it's,
Well, what's also fun, too, I think what's really... I'm a softie. And I can cry if I think of just like... I tease
if you want to cry in here, you can cry in here.
I teased my mom growing up because she would cry during the commercial promos for Rescue 911. And as I've gotten older, like we were when Hamilton was streaming or still is or whatever, we sat down as a family and watched it. And at one point, I just started getting really emotional. I was like, these guys really worked so hard. Like, I started thinking about all this stuff that was going into it.
Look at the set design.
I'm just going like this. And my oldest looks over at me and goes, Dad, are you okay? And I was like, they're just doing such a good job. And I think that's what they don't, like, a lot of people don't think about SNL.
Mm-hmm.
If you, like, you hear, like, there's a reason why every person that has ever been on there at the very end says, this incredible crew, this incredible cast. I mean, the awards that they get for their makeup department and hair department and all that stuff, like the amount of effort that goes into a show, and for a person to go, I don't like this one person, and then it's like the whole thing's horrible. Mm-hmm. That's totally just not.
Yeah,
you're not seeing the whole thing,
and that's such a convenience to be like, that sucks. And it's like, look. Maybe it doesn't land for you, but it doesn't suck.
Right.
You know, it doesn't suck.
Right.
And
I mean, Mad TV's not on an air anymore.
Yeah. It tells you how hard it is.
Right.
Dude, and Mad TV was one of those two. Like, it's crazy how they were doing the same thing, but there were two completely different feels to it.
Yeah.
And it felt like SNL just always was not a step ahead, but it was just a little stronger, right? Mm-hmm. But you could go pick out all these Mad TV skits where you're like, Jesus, that's hilarious. To this day, the Bobby Lee one where he's filming the I can't remember the name of it, but he comes out in like a spandex green suit because they're going to do all this green screen work because they're recording stuff for a video game. So he's in like a green suit, and I think he's got like the little balls all over him for the video game stuff. And everything looks like it's this homoerotic scene because they're like, okay, so the game is called, I think it's Dragon Slayer or Demon Slayer. And they're like, the game's called Demon Slayer. So what you're going to want to do is you're walking in the cave. And he's like, all right, walking in the cave. And they're like, okay, there's a beast up here. So you're going to want to pull your dagger out and start stabbing him. And he's just like, okay. Stabbing him. And they're like, and then there's another one over to your left. He's like, okay, we're going to stab him. And they're like, okay. And they're bleeding all over you. He's like, oh, no, the blood's good. It gives you power points. He's like, oh, okay. You know, like, and the way he just fully committed, it was like a 3-minute bit of just that kind of stuff.
Right.
And just so hilarious. And you're like, how can you be that funny? And then the show still gets canceled eventually.
Right.
You know, it's incredible.
Right.
And then knowing that it's all live, you know, I think anyone who hates on those shows at all has never created anything. Right.
Ooh,
or you were really shitty
point.
at it.
Yeah.
Because if you've tried to make even a shitty song, it's really hard.
Yeah.
You know,
it is.
if you and your buddies get together with a couple instruments and you're like, I have this idea. You know, the effort of, what you were saying, it's like the effort it took to, one, be vulnerable enough to be like, hey, guys, I wrote a song. Mm-hmm. You want to hear it? Like, you know, that alone, it getting over that initial, I want to show you this deep personal thing, putting yourself out there, because they could just go, oh, dude, you suck. We don't want to play music with you.
Right.
And then you got to spend a couple hours together, like just getting used to jamming and playing and just going through the motions. And it's like you can do everything right and just not have chemistry. You know, there's still just that intangible, universal thing of, does it just fit? And sometimes it just doesn't fit, right? And so it's like I've always tried to give a lot of people leeway with music, especially just because that's what I started with. And then now, especially with comedy, it's like, man, they want it to go well. They didn't come up here going like, I really want to ruin your night.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
It's so hard to make something that even half the room likes, you know, because and especially now, most people are just so cynical. It's just like, it sucks. And it's like, you gave it 10 seconds. Can you give it 1 or 2 songs?
Well, that's something I always, so with comedy, there's a lot of it that doesn't land for me. Mm-hmm. I'm not, in saying that, I'm not saying that I'm a snob or anything like that.
No, it's just
there's just stuff that just doesn't hit for me.
Yeah,
and the same thing happens with music. There's a ton of stuff that Marcus showed me that I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah, and
that's just the way it is. But I think that's what's so funny with me too is that I will sit through any B movie and watch the whole thing and then go, hey, you know what? I laughed a couple of times, and good for them for putting that out. You know what I mean?
I mean, for real.
But there is stuff that I do turn off.
Yeah, I mean, for me to say something like genuinely sucks, I would have to feel like it's phony.
Yes.
That's the only way I'll be like, fuck that, you know? And because like this show's called I'm a Fan Of. It would be so easy to put out like YouTube videos or write blogs about like, this is terrible, and let me tell you why. But it's like
Right.
that's such a cheap route. It's
Right.
so lame. You know, it's so much harder to go. These are the things that I think are really good, and you know, prop it up. But it's such a harder road because that's not interesting. That doesn't give like. It's not the clickbait people want.
Right. There's no heat coming.
You know
off
what I'm
of it.
saying? It's like
Right.
I wrote this piece about Alfred Kainga, who I think is really a really great comic.
I read it.
Yeah, and it's like I had to start it off like clickbaity, like, you know, how dare you watch him or
it
something
works.
like that. Yeah, and it does. And that one was like, boom, most popular article. And it's like, fucking, I hate it. So, like, you can't just go like, I saw this comic and he was brilliant. I thought he was great and you should go watch him. Everyone's just like, oh, gross. I'm not reading that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And
that's so weird. I don't know where that turn took, because I mean, as a kid, as a teenager, as you're growing up, you try anything.
yeah.
You're going to get on that bike and you know it's going to be a hard ride and you know you're probably going to fall, but you still keep on trying. And then as you get older, for whatever reason, there's a shift that happens that you're like, oh, I don't know. That risk is too much. And it's like, how? Like, that's something I say to my kids and my wife. It's like, we'll sit down for a family movie night, right? And they're like, but what if it sucks? And I said, well, the good thing with streaming is you can just change, you can turn it off. Like, we don't have to sit through the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's not like back in the day if you went and spent $5 on a VHS tape.
Dude, but you know what? Like, think about that. We were able to go to a Blockbuster Video back in the day and go like, it's definitely this movie we're going to try out. And we had it for what, 3 days. We're committing.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes the movie was horrible.
Right.
And you were like, we will watch it for a second time because we have it for 3 days.
Well, then you find gems like on Amazon Prime where like oh man, it was actually because of How Did This Get Made podcast. And they did one on Everyone Loves Mel and streamed the movie. And I was delighted because it was so horrible, but it was also still, it was that kind of bad to where you could still enjoy it. Like it was still a fun adventure. And it was so much fun that we enjoyed it so much that we also, for my oldest's birthday, 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we sat down as a family with the in-laws and watched it. And like, Claire's like, you got to watch this. You got to see this part. And there's this big reveal towards the end of it. And you're like, this movie the whole time was about this, and that could have happened this whole time. And it was just, and the payoff was like so small, like whatever. But yeah, I don't know what it is why we decide that we're going to shy away from something unless it does generate some kind of heat or like like I clicked on a clickbait article the other day. It was one of the kids from Big Daddy, Dylan Sprouse. And it says, this is why Dylan Sprouse, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it's Adam Sandler. Like, how does anybody have anything on Adam Sandler?
Right, yeah.
I got to check it out. So I looked at it and it was like, yeah, it was really cool. He kept the set loose and he had like a beer in his hand the whole time and he had a basketball goal in the back. And I was like, so I looked at the kid and I've come to find out he was the twin brother of Cole Sprouse, who plays on, oh my gosh, CW show. Jughead, Archie show, whatever it's called. But anyways, it was just funny because that's typically what happens with anybody that's exploring anything new.
Yeah. You got to, something about the negative is so enticing. And like all these social media platforms know it. They will promote, they promote things that have more clicks. And that's why they have to get
Riverdale. It's called Riverdale.
Riverdale. That's why they have to get so careful around like election time and stuff, because these people will get everyone riled up because they know it'll create clicks and article stuff and generate revenue. Meanwhile, it's all just meant to make you angry.
Yeah.
So it'll just be like, 3 things this political party did that you need to know about. And people were like, well, that's not the political party I like. And
right.
I got to read all this. And,
Yeah.
And it's so hard. Like, it's so difficult to just go, man, this thing I experienced was really incredible. And I would love for you to experience it. Everyone just goes, boring.
And I'll touch back on to what you said earlier about like just sitting there and taking in the whole process of a show and watching somebody do that. I think that's what I mean, to be honest, I wish I would be out more in comedy clubs, because when I saw even Ryan do his show, Ryan Pereiro, when he was the opener for Joe Mackey, I was like, dude, just even like listening to the podcast and then watching him do his show. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was just blown away. And it is that thing. Like, I think that's the same thing with music, right? That's what touches with people with music is they watch the process, or if you get to know the band or whatever, you kind of know what they're going through. And then you see them do their thing on stage creatively. And it's like, okay, cool. So that's what's important about podcasts like yours. It's like delivering like hey, advertising this band, advertising this artist, advertising this comedian, and just in general saying, hey, these are things that are happening and you should explore it because there's something going on. And a lot of them may not even go big time, but at least you got to be a part of that story or that journey with them. And I mean, geez, you might benefit from laughing. You might benefit from finding new music, finding new art. Like, oh gosh, I think that's a risk I'm willing to take.
Dude, you grew up around the DFW area, right?
No.
Where'd you grow up?
Oklahoma.
Did y'all have anything similar to like, we have the Dallas Observer?
So there was the Tulsa World.
Okay, well, so there's like the Dallas Observer, the Fort Worth Weekly I wasn't familiar with when I was growing up, but I'm sure they did similar stuff. But like the little small town I was in, we would drive, 40 minutes to Plano just to go to like Chipotle and CD Warehouse and like flip through the CDs. But we would always grab an Observer to see like what concerts are coming through.
Oh, cool.
And there was always, a writer or somebody who is like this band or this thing. And that was a way to explore new stuff. And then it's like when I went through like the emo metal music phase of like, what was it? Like AP Magazine. You remember those?
Yeah.
And it's like they would do these great, whether you like the genres or not, they would do these great pieces highlighting musicians, right? And then Guitar World, like magazines, they would always do like a feature piece on a guitarist or something. And you would dive a level deeper on them and be like, oh, I love this. It's like, you may love or hate Limp Bizkit. It's like, but Wes Borland is a very creative guitarist and a very creative, like, on-stage personality.
Yeah.
And Limp Bizkit had a sound that was totally its own, right? So you can shit on it. Like, you may not like it, but it was very unique. And then it's like when you dive in and you go like, oh, Wes Borland chooses all these costume designs himself, and this is why he's kind of strange like that. And you really connect with this person. You're like, oh, there's an artistic endeavor there, even on what a lot of people would consider cheesy music.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so then if you do that on music that is on even a slightly deeper level, it's like, man, there's a lot to digest of why someone created anything. And that's when it gets really interesting. So I was just talking to Alfred about this on the last, like 2 episodes ago, about how I want more people in DFW to do that, to like watch the movie Almost Famous and want to be the journalist.
Yeah.
And like finding those interesting things to tell the stories, because there's so much talent in all these different artistic corners of DFW and all the surrounding areas, but they don't have these outlets to get promotion. You know what I mean? It's really hard to call up someone and be like, could you listen to this and potentially do a review? Or could you, the best thing we have right now is probably KX, is it KXT? Mm-hmm. They still do their local show on Thursdays, right?
Right.
And what is her name? Oh God, it's going to drive me crazy. Amy? Is it Amy something?
It was Amy Miller, but it changed to.
Well, I was listening to it mostly when it was Amy Miller,
hard. Yeah.
But because she kind of started that, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like you need that. You need your local radio show to go like, we're dedicating this segment to this music. And I think that's a piece of the puzzle we're missing around here, is having people that just love stuff and want to help you experience it. Because for me, most of the music and stuff that I heard of was from either a friend or a relative.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think with social media, you get so bombarded with stuff that it's kind of hard to soak things in. You're just scrolling. But if someone's like, sends you a link and is like, check out this band, then I think you're more likely to give it a full listen, or one of the coolest moves that ever happened to me. You ever heard of a band called Pokey Lafarge?
Yes.
Okay. So I bought tickets to watch Jack White in Oklahoma. He played up there like several years ago. And I was like, I don't know when he's going to tour through again. I don't know if I'll be free. So I'm just going to buy 4 tickets and I'll find 2 people to come with me and my wife, And I've always just wanted to I want you to come to the show with me. And so my friend Brooks and another friend of a friend named Millicent came with us. And she was like, oh, thank you so much for the tickets. And to thank me, she bought us tickets to a Pokey Lafarge show here in Dallas. And she's like, you ever heard of the guy? I was like, nope. And she's like, It's a little different, but I think you're going to like it. After talking to y'all about music, you're going to have a good time. And sure enough, we show up, and I'm just blown away at this live show. I'm like, she didn't tell me anything about it, so I didn't know it was going to be this throwback, jazzy, bluesy, what would you call that style? It's like a Memphis swing kind of thing.
Like Memphis ragtime, maybe?
Yeah, but it's old but modern. And
right.
Very, very... he managed to make a very old sound very original. Where it didn't sound like you're listening to your granny's old record. And the concert was just incredible.
Was it?
Oh, I felt so stupid because this guy was standing in the crowd in front of us, and he's like fully dressed up, like over the top kind of Western wear, stuff like this. And I was just like, we're drinking and we're like kind of being assholes, and we're thinking like, geez, he really went all out for this, and like, and then when Pokey LaFarge comes on stage, he comes up on stage with them, and he's like their auxiliary player, and he is just everything he picks up, man, from like, I think it was the banjo. What are the little castanets? Is that what those are? Yeah, things like that. He's playing I think he's playing spoons and like all sorts of.
Oh my gosh!
And he's killing everything. And I was just like, I misjudged everyone my whole life. I should never do this again. I was like, you earned that outfit, man. You earned it.
That's funny.
And it was just such a cool live show experience, and it's like that's now why we're huge Pokey LaFarge fans. Is someone just goes, hey, we got these extra tickets since you took us to Jack White, you want to go check out a show? And it's like you need those people in your life to just go, let's go try this.
Man, that's one thing that Mark is really good at, is like trying to challenge people to go out, like in the band, even to see stuff outside of our
just the band y'all watch at your own shows.
Yeah. And so like even him and his girlfriend, they went up to see Pavement, and when they were doing the most recent tour. And so I think it is very important. I think that's why, that's why I share music. That's why I share comedy and stuff, and people send me stuff all the time. And it's like, it is important to spread it. It is important to exercise that muscle, because I do think that life is pretty boring if you're only eating a bowl of Cheerios all the time and that's all you have.
Yeah, there's so much old music that I love, but I don't want to listen to it anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I'll defend it for my whole... I'll be like, you got to check it out if you've never heard it. But it's like, I've heard it enough. It's like, it'll always have a special place in my heart, but it's gone now. I want newer stuff still.
Yeah.
And, it's like bands like NoFX. I love NoFX.
Oh, yeah.
Love them, but I can't remember the last time I just put it on, but I listened to it straight for like 10 years. You know what I mean? It's like, I got my fix. I could put it on right now and still sing every single word. I'm going to know everything, And I'll show anybody who's like, I think I like a little punk rock music. I'm like, here, check this out. You're going to love it. And yeah, I don't know. There's too much cool stuff to not check it out. Like somebody just turned me on to talking about the bombarded with stuff. It's like I kept seeing all the clips for the show Letterkenny.
Oh gosh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I literally just started watching it this week.
Oh, man,
and I'm like, it's so fucking good.
It's really, what's crazy is the joke density in that, and it's so fast.
So here's what I realized.
So fast.
There's almost no dynamic movement in that show. People are not walking around. They're not doing things. Every scene is sitting still for the most part. But like you said, the density of the words is just so rapid fire that's the dynamic movement of the show.
Yeah.
And it's like, God, so much is happening and nothing's happening.
Right. That's I think that's
I'm only on like episode 5, I think. I just started.
Man,
I'm loving it.
Really,
man.
really new. Yeah, that's great.
Well, because it's such a unique style of comedy. It's very different to anything else I was watching. And it makes you realize like it made me realize, like, if there aren't people out there caring about the new stuff, how many producers, if you pitched that show to them, if they didn't see it, if you just pitched it, they'd go, there's no way.
Yeah.
This thing sucks. No, that's not good. They're doing what? They're sitting in a produce stand talking about their testicles.
Yeah,
it's just not going to fly, guys.
Yeah.
And, so you got to have, like, these creative types who are also capable of producing it. That way they're like, fuck it, let's roll the dice, man. It sounds pretty good.
Taking the challenge, yeah. And there is, I think that's what's interesting too, like even touching more on like how hard it is to create anything. Mm-hmm. And even in movie and TV, like how many years I've heard, I mean, dude, there's so many stories about movies and TV shows that have been sitting around for like 10 years and all of a sudden it finally sees the light of day. Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't even know what they went through to get to that point to have that show made. So I mean, I give a lot of things a chance, and I mean, I really do. But I think that it is important to explore it and to support as an artist or even a fan of an artist to support those that are the creative types because, dude, it's difficult. And it's hard.
I'll get submissions for this show, and it's painful sometimes because my thing is like I will give your album a listen front to back, one full time, like uninterrupted. And what I mean uninterrupted is like I might be mowing my front lawn. I'll be doing something that's automatic, right? That I'm not thinking about doing the task, so I can just absorb your music. And it's hard. Like so much of it is bad, but you realize it's like, man, they put themselves out there. Like you gotta try it. And then if I can listen to the whole thing and then just go back to you and be like, thank you so much, it's just not a good fit. It's like I at least know I gave you a shot.
Yeah,
And it's like now it's like, man, at least just listen to one song, people. Like listen to one full song. Right. You don't even have to make an opinion yet. Just check it out.
Right.
Know? And I think most people now put it on for about 30 seconds and they're done.
Yeah, I think that's what's cool about the Billy Law episode that I listened to was when you picked out your 3 favorite songs, I believe.
Yeah,
and then you're like, hey, I'm not going to go through the whole album because one thing that I appreciate about you when you promote the musical guest is that it is an experience for the listener.
Oh, thank you.
And so
I never quite know how it lands. Like people are listening, but I'm always like, am I just full of shit?
No, it is. Because I mean, Mark gives me a hard time because a lot of the times I listen to my music on shuffle and very rarely do I go through an album front to back. But when I do, it's walking into that comedy room and seeing the whole thing, the whole show and everything. And so when you were talking about that with Billy and like that album and like, hey, listen to these. This is great, but really go back and listen to the whole album. And I'm like, dude, yeah, I could see that because you're right. You don't get the full taste if you're just listening to selective tracks or the singles that come out and just listen to those. And then you don't get the whole thing over the way that Mark, thank you. But he even pointed out the way that even the track listing is made. Yeah. There's a reason for that.
There's a lot of thought into it.
It's not just randomly. Like we even talked about it with our full length and the most recent one, you know. And there is a lot more that goes into it than what people realize. And so I think that's what's so eye-opening from as a musician and being in a band that's released now 3 different albums, 4 if you count the live one. There is intentionality behind that creativity. Yeah. And so going back to even to say, man, this just sucks. Like, at least give it a shot and try it because you don't know what you're going to find. There's stuff that I found when I was a kid that I have it locked back here that it was just obscure. I thought I would try it out. I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, dude, there's actually some really cool stuff in here. Even stuff my kids show me. There's an artist, Current Joy, that I was like, well, this is more their thing. It's kind of cool. But then they're also in another band called Surf Curse. And it's like, dude. And so what's fun is that if you have those people in your life, is being able to exchange those, have a transaction. Like, I'm showing you this band. We do it on road trips. So one kid will get the phone and they'll play an album or they'll play like a handful of songs that they like.
That's so good.
And then the next one will do that. And then my wife will go, hey, when I was growing up, this is what my favorite stuff was. And all of us will sit there and we'll digest it and we'll talk about the music and we'll go, okay, cool. And so, I mean, I think it's important to have friends like that. And I think it's important for people in general to exercise that. Yeah. Because just, sharing that musical experience with somebody is just as fun as telling somebody a crazy story about your life.
That same friend Brooks that I was telling you about, he plays bass and his dad plays bass. And he's, he played in bands like his whole life. And he plays in I don't know if their cover band's still going. Check out the Lightning Crispies if you get a chance, if they're still out there. Nice. Shout out. But they cover incredible, like classic rock music. And I remember we were watching them at like a restaurant in Carrollton. And just doing cover songs for the restaurant and like people, hanging out. A couple people get up and dance and stuff. Real chill. And my wife and I are just having a great time, And we just came out because we knew it was our friend's dad's band. And we're like, well, we got to go watch it. And he was talking about how, a lot of times music, it is even the song. It's the moment when you were listening to the song that you connect with it. And you know, I think he shared a moment that he connected with the song before they played it. And then you start to realize it's like, yeah, man, like if y'all are going on a road trip, just shuffling songs, it's like, it may not even be the song. It's just that you and the family are together checking out this album. My wife and I did that with Casey Musgraves when we were going to Big Ben.
Nice.
You know, it's like a 15-hour drive or something. I don't know. So we went through her catalog, and then you just realize, like, damn, like if you just listen to her single, it would be real easy to this was several years ago before she kind of went into like I'd say now she drifted into like a Cher kind of lane.
Yeah, she
and
did.
It's cool, but it was just before that, right?
Yeah.
And so it was very easy to label her as a like, oh, it's a pop country girl, right? She's just doing the normal thing. And then when you listen to the album, you're like, oh, no. She stole all the pop country elements to trick you. And there's actually a lot of substance in this country music, you know, and she's an incredible vocalist, you know, and you don't hear that on the hits. But then when you listen to all her B-sides, you're like, Jesus, she's got a set of pipes. She's got a brain that's not typical of the like, ha ha ha, I'm a female country musician, you know, like, you know,
right.
like, and you realize she's very clever, you know, and, but all those albums, I'll still think about like the drive through as we're getting into Big Ben and you start getting into like canyons and stuff out there. You're like, man, this is nice. This is a perfect album for this.
We actually had that same thing. We went to California, and my youngest, she was still not talking at the time. And we're driving through, and we're in our rental car, and it came with Sirius XM. It was the first time I found Sirius XMU. So we're listening to all this indie stuff that was on there, which I don't know if you can be indie if you're on that channel, but I guess you can be. But driving through the forests and up through the hills of California, and just it's all foggy and super moody and stuff, and all this really cool lo-fi indie stuff was coming through, and Frankie and the O's was one of the bands that I still remember. So there's this thing that's like, every time I hear that song, it triggers it, and it connects on a physiological level that still to this day we talk about it as a family, and we'll play a song from that trip, and then what's cool is the offshoots of that. So it's like a feeder to like these little memories that happen. And it was the first time that out of nowhere, my kid in the back, who's not talked, has had a hard time talking the whole time. We've been working with him to get to talk. Cake. I want chocolate cake. I want chocolate cake. Give me cake. And we're like, what? Like, just out of nowhere. That was like, there was the words that they started saying.
Yeah.
So like, there's that cool memory of that. But I mean, that same thing happens. Like, I could tell you with Casey Musgraves' Golden Hour, that album, that was mine and Josh's album that we would sing to on the way home after a gig.
Awesome.
You know, like just stuff like that. So, and there's like, I can remember POD's Southtown when that came out. I was a youth minister at the time, and I was driving these kids in the youth group, and they were in a punk band. We drove from Oklahoma all the way up to Arkansas in one night to play, so they could play a show.
Oh, wow.
And I had my mom and dad's pop-up camper on the back. And the whole time, the drummer was like, he was my co-pilot, and the guitarist was, the guitarist was the co-pilot. I'm getting hung up on details, but anyways, we're sitting up there, and the only song that we allowed ourselves to listen to was Southtown the whole trip.
Oh my God.
Over and over and over, to the point to where we listened to it ad nauseum. But I still remember that trip, and I remember watching them play their punk show, and we were driving back, and we got into a state park somehow, and parked the camper, and in the middle of the night, it started raining really hard, and it flooded the camper because we didn't know it had a hole in the roof. I made them breakfast the next morning, went to the store while they were sleeping, got them pork chops and some eggs, and cooked it over a fire, brought them back to Oklahoma the next morning. So
yeah,
there's all these things that are connected to music that, I mean, even I have memories with my dad and Pink Floyd and Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
He is not a musician at all, but he loves to play air guitar to that album. And so I have fond memories of while we're working on the guitar, he's like, hold on, Cory, you got to listen to this solo. And he wanted to be a guitarist so bad because he's always like playing David Gilmour's parts, and stuff. Yeah. And he would just lean into it. And I think that's the thing that with music for me, not just the memories, but my dad was really, really big on pushing music. Like he told me when I was younger, like when I was a baby, they would have these big parties. And I was the firstborn out of 5 boys.
Oh, wow.
And they would put me in the middle of the bed when I was crying and couldn't calm down. And my dad would just put on Genesis, or he would put on Pink Floyd or Peter Gabriel. And he would just crank it to where the window panes were like rattling. And he would come back in like 10 minutes later. I'm in the middle of the bed cooing, just trying to sing along to the albums. And then I would be asleep 2 songs later.
Dang, that's cool.
So ever since then, there's just been a connection with music for me. Ever since then.
I think we grew up in a town where we had to commute everywhere, right? Everything was 40 minutes away. So I think that's a big reason why music was just a part of our life too, because it's like you're in the car. You got to turn something on, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, just like for me, I remember my dad had we had this Ford F-350. It was like the old one where it's like 2-tone color, and it's like what you thought was a fancy paint job back then, and you see it now and you're like, Jesus. But you know, it's like when CD changers were getting big. So he had a 6-disc CD changer that my brother installed in there, and he didn't know how to use this shit really, you know? And so I think the only 2 CDs in there for the longest time were The Doors. It was like a double disc, you know, greatest hits or something. And so that's like the memory of that point in our life together is like at that point I was already driving. I might have just had my permit or just started driving, but we would always drive around the area. He'd let me drive, and it's like we just listened to The Doors nonstop. That's all we listened to, you know. So it's like it's impossible to think about The Doors now when I hear a song come on and not relate it to him.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
and it's just weird how that, you know, it's like the moment I hear a Doors song, it's like I picture the truck, I picture the drives we were on, all, you know, and it's like, you know, that one line where it's like, I woke up this morning and got myself a beer.
Yeah.
It's like, I remember my dad saying something like that, like, yeah, you know, that's sometimes it's like that, you know, and you're like, all right, I guess.
The commentary.
Yeah, you know, of like, whatever, however that music relates to them.
Right.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When David from the Lightning Krispies dropped that thing of knowledge, it was like this light bulb went off, and I was like, man, all my music really is about the moment when I was listening to it and who I was listening to it with. And which makes you wonder, like, it's like, do I love any music just for the music? Like, you know, or is it all connected to those things? Because even with this show, I'll connect the majority of these bands that I love on here to the fun time I have doing this show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
I think it's hard not to. And I think, like, I was just thinking while you were talking about that, like, my dad had a game with me that whenever we were together and we were listening just to whatever was on the radio. I don't know where he came up with it. It was just one of those cool dad things, I guess. But he was just like, got it down to where if a song came on, I could name it within 3 seconds, 3 or 4 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
And what song it was and what album it was coming off of. And it was usually something that he's already showed me, right? And so it was pretty cool. But I think that there is something that is there that with music and the power of music that really does connect to a inner thread with us that we somehow, because it doesn't matter, a lot of the songs that we listen to, we somehow put ourselves in that storyline. It allows us to, for some reason or whatever. I fell in love with the girl at the rock show. Like, everybody knows what that lyric is. Everybody's had that experience, and everybody's done something along that line. And if it's not that, everybody can also work sucks. You know, there's different lyrics from different bands that we can all connect to. Yeah. And I think that's part of it, is that the music allows the listener to, it's kind of like whenever you're reading a book. I don't know if you do this, but sometimes I impart my point of view. I don't just read it as like the words that are there. Like I'm immersed into that story.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where even physiologically, like there was a study that was done that a lot of kids that were adopted that came from like well-off families that were later, you know, given up to foster homes or whatever. The one memory that they always had was the memory of a trip. It wasn't the teddy bear. It wasn't anything like big extravagant thing or whatever. And I was talking to this guy that I know about that, and he said, yeah, on Father's Day, my daughter came up to me and said, you know, I've sat there and I've watched you work your tail off and all this stuff and all these things, and I know what you try to do all these things for me, but the best thing that you've ever done to me that has always stuck to me with me to this day," she's like 28 or something like that at the time of the story. She goes, "Was the time that you set aside to go down to the bike trails with me and ride bikes."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there is something that is simple about humans that allows us to connect to those different things, whether it's that act of kindness or setting its intentional time. If it's showing to somebody the music or the lyric that sticks with you. There's stuff from Sugar Ray that with me that I'm like,
don't get me started, man.
Man, I love it.
I love so much music that other people shit on.
I do,
and
too.
It's like, man, you can love that music too. And it's like Sugar Ray goes hard.
It does.
I don't care. It does, man. It goes hard. And it's like the what was the acoustic album? Is it 1459?
Yeah.
That's a great album.
It's fun.
It may not be for you, but it's a great album. And it's like nobody at the time was writing double lead acoustic parts in a pop rock band.
Right.
For the moment that it came out, that was a very original concept. But it's just now, it's like, yeah, it doesn't translate to what you're listening to now, but
no.
It's like, I'll still, like, every now and then that'll swing through the rotation, and you're just like, every morning and you're like, yeah, it's solid. I'm still going with it.
Yeah, well, I feel that way with, like, even Incubus, like,
oh, Incubus is great,
Morning
man.
View, that album, oh my gosh.
The talent.
It's so crazy.
Well, first of all, the playing on that album, drummer and bass are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Those are phenomenal. You may not like it, but you cannot deny the talent of those two. And then the guitar player, he's not the most technical player, but again, at the time, that was a very fun, original way of playing, and it sounded only like Incubus. Right? It was very original. And the singer's great too. So it's like, what do you not like, man? It's just a song.
And throwing in turntables. I mean, come on.
Yeah, dude. But people don't know how we were all getting our minds blown when it's like they mixed record scratches with rock music. I didn't know you could do that.
It's like they listen to Aerosmith and Run DMC album,
Yeah, but for us, it's like we probably heard, like Sugar Ray and Limp Bizkit or somebody else before we heard the Run DMC thing.
Yeah.
And so you didn't know that had already been experimented with. And we're just like, what?
Yeah.
He's a member of the band?
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, even metal music, it's like when Slipknot did it. You're like, Slipknot has turntables?
Well, I think that's what's fun about, like, art in general, like movie, music, whatever. Every once in a while, it's fun to have junk food.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so that's why, like, the Sugar Ray for me is like, oh man, I got so much. We were recording at Audio Dallas, and I was like, everybody's pulling in these, like, what are we going through with this, like, for this song? And I was like, dude, for me, it's Sugar Ray. Of course, as a joke. But,
I just want to fly, baby.
Yeah,
I just want to fly.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, yeah, point in case of, like, again, like, I don't tend to be a snob about anything. I try not to be. And so, like, I think that's what also helps with my drumming, my approach to music, and even with Brave Little Howl, is that, like, I'm able to hear the things that I like out of different things and put that and implement that into my playing. I mean, I would love to play, like, the guy from Appleseed Cast. His name was Cobra because he would just strike so fast, and he would do these things on the cymbals. It was just cool. It's just little accent things on the bells and stuff. And I would love to be, like, a super technical guy. Like, in my heart, like, I really would. But I guess I'm lazy and don't have the technical discipline to sit down and go, all right, now I'm going to work on my rudiments and blah, blah, blah. Like, that feels too, like, if I'm being honest, for me, it feels too spreadsheety.
Yeah.
To where I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. I could do that. But, like, I'm also being asked to play a 4/4 beat on most of these songs.
Yeah.
So.
And there are very few drummers that are that technical and really know how to groove.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the first drummer I'd ever learned of that was very technical drummer that I never noticed was technical was, is it Dana Carey in Tool?
Yeah.
Yeah. Him, it's like, it took, like, I had to listen to go, oh, that's pretty difficult, because all you're hearing is the dun 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 dun. Like, you're just hearing the groove, and it's not until you focus in. It goes back to talking about Mark and Billy and them. It's like, if he pulled all those little pieces out, you would know something's missing.
Right.
But as he's doing it all, none of it's really, you're not going, those are incredible drums throughout the whole song. You're just listening to a song.
Yeah.
But then if you try to replicate it, you're like, wow, this guy's doing some really interesting stuff here. And so it's hard to find those guys who can be incredibly technical without just showing off all the time. It's such a difficult skill.
Yeah.
So I could see how it'd be very boring to be like, all right, let's work on it. You know?
But I mean, I do see the benefit because
Sure.
I mean, like I'm self-taught and I taught myself through just listening to cassettes and just playing along to that. And I had a church drum set that was given to me. And I just sat in this room and I just sat down and listened to old Christian rock music like Jesus Freak and stuff like that, and sat along and played with it the best that I could. And man, I even I was like, okay, well, I don't know if this is really doing it, so I probably should go get like a book and like a CD, and I was like, okay, now work on this. And so I did like the basic stuff. And the only thing that was even close to prior to that was I played snare drum and band, and like we had to move, and so I stopped playing and then never revisited it. And so it wasn't until high school that I even got back into drumming, and the rest is history. I mean, I've been in a post-hardcore emo band, I've been in a folk band, I've been in a country band, been in an indie rock band, I've been in whatever Brave Little Howl is, I've been in church bands, and I don't know, man. It's just I like just locking it down and just providing that foundation to serve the songs so that the other guys can do their thing.
Yeah. You're talking about playing the drum set at church. And I have never been like a churchgoer. I'm not a very religious person. And I've always had this kind of love-hate about music in church. Not even like Christian music, right?
Yeah.
But I just have no desire to go to church at all. At all. But so many incredible musicians started out in a church.
I had that thought the other day.
You know what I mean? It's like it's weird. It's like this thing. Like, I'm not going to get on a soapbox because like if people love religion and you're a good person, I don't want to step on your toes. It's just like I don't even think religion is wrong. I don't think that there is or isn't a God. I love astronomy, and so like when you start thinking about how big and infinite the universe is. It's like you just realize like, okay, when we die, none of us truly know what happens right now. We all have some beliefs and stuff, so I don't judge because you don't know. And I'm very open. It's like if I found stuff where it's like, holy shit, there's definitely this God, this one or whatever.
Right.
So I have nothing against any religion, and there's a lot of me that really likes a lot of religious aspects, right? But I just can't step into churches. I just get so like
it's a lot sometimes.
Well, you know what I mean? It's like depending. Well, first of all, I grew up in Texas where it's like any way you turn and throw a rock, there's a church right now. Yeah. And trying to figure out which one is run by like good-hearted people who have good intentions versus like, I want to make a bunch of money. You know, it's very difficult. And so that already jaded me. But all this incredible music, so many of these people started out like in choir or in the church band or something. And it's like, that's how they got their chops, by singing or playing multiple times a week in these classic old, religious songs that get sung every Sunday. And it's like, this thing I don't really like that much, it sure is responsible for a lot of stuff that I really like. It's very like a dual, it's very interesting.
Well, I think even like here in Texas, like I've only been in Texas like maybe 17 years now. And even in Oklahoma, like, all the church, I mean, the town that I came from, at one point in like 87 or something like that, they had the record for the most churches with the population that they had.
Yeah.
And it was insane.
It's wild, right?
It's insane.
Yeah.
And they all were against each other.
Which is not what it's about.
No. And so there's a story there with my dad, and he did a really cool thing in that town and brought all those churches together.
Oh, wow.
And really made all the youth group. It came from the youth groups and the youth ministers coming together and like allowing them to host different fifth quarters instead of everybody just going to the one. And this church over here is struggling to have a fifth quarter just to reach out to kids and let the kids have a safe place to hang. But he did a thing that was really, really cool back then. But I was thinking about it. I think it's because of the saturation with churches and just even in general, like there is that journey that everybody kind of goes on, whether it's religious or not. And for whatever reason, a lot of musicians that I've run into, it's the same thing. Like either they find that realm that they want to be in with the Christian music industry, or they were a part of it. And then it was like, okay, now I'm going to start this band. And now I'm, just going to do this thing over here. And like even just all the different ones that I've heard, I totally agree, and it's wild. I've never, I'm not outside of that realm that much.
Yeah,
but all the musicians that I've met in that realm too, there's a ton of them that are talented that won't even see the light of day. They won't even be on a major record or anything like that. But man, they're pouring their hearts out there on stage and stuff.
Yeah, it's basically it turns me off when it starts getting like, have you watched The Righteous Gemstones?
Yeah.
Like when it gets to that level, I'm just like, fuck you.
Yeah, that's hard. When we moved to Oklahoma, we went from not being in church at all to being in a church, and it was a mega church.
Oh, really?
It was.
What made y'all decide to go to a mega church? I'm always so curious because I don't meet many people that go that I could have like an honest conversation about it. You know.
Well, it was one of those things.
Because first of all, you know how those mega church people are.
Yeah.
Like the stereotype, which it's like, if you talk to them, they're like, and how are you? And it's like very like, and it's like, we can have a real conversation here. You don't have to have that tone. Like, well, how are you doing today? How's everything? It's very like, everything's perfect here in the land of Jesus. And it's like, yeah, that's awesome.
I will say my introduction to faith was...
Not faith, the mega church.
Yeah. So when we got to the mega church, it was one of those things that my parents... at the time were trying to quit drugs, and a friend of theirs had called them up and said, hey, I found this new high. The highest thing you ever find is the best, all this stuff. And he also had a business opportunity for my dad, not related to drugs.
Yeah.
But my dad's a really talented carpenter. And so he's like one of those guys that you show him a picture of a cabinet and he's like, I want this with these doors, but I want it to look like this.
Oh, wow.
He can build it.
Talk about a lost art, by the way.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And his dad was a decent carpenter, but I'm pretty sure that's where he got it from. But anyway, so he was like, I want you to come down here and work for me, and we're going to do this and that. And my dad's like, okay. So we moved from Colorado in like 91 to Oklahoma, and he tells my dad about Jesus and all this stuff and invites us to church.
I'm sorry, I can't resist the opportunity, but like, was he like, let me tell you about this other guy who was a carpenter. Like, did he open up like that? Like,
I don't remember the full conversation. I just remember him saying, like, according to my dad, he was like, I got the highest high I've ever found.
Yeah.
And my dad's like, I'm in. And so
that's cool.
We uprooted our family and came to Oklahoma and went to Oklahoma and moved in his house. And he was like, it was Friday, Saturday we visited with him. And he was like, hey, tomorrow morning we're going to go to church. And gave his, what they call testimony, and said, this is what I found. And I found new hope and all this stuff and a new lot on life. And I want that for you because I care about you. And my dad was like, yeah, I think that's a good move. And I'm just looking at him like, what?
How old are you at this point?
I was like right at middle school.
Okay.
So then the next thing I know, we didn't really have an option. We were just getting up and going to church.
Yeah, you're a church family now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first church that I ever went to in Tulsa was this big mega church called Victory. Victory Church there in Tulsa, part of the Oral Roberts University stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember standing there going, this is wild.
It's wild.
It is wild. And the stuff that led into other things, now this is where you're probably going to be, don't get too sad, but he decided, like it led to us going to actually smaller churches, which we liked better. And the smaller churches, one of them, they had a conference where my dad wanted to be a part of this teaching thing with them. That guy, we went to their conference in this big auditorium, and he told them that any music over 4/4 time signature is of the devil. And it's the same stuff that they use in African tribes to conjure up demons and all this stuff and put people in trances. And that's where the demons can enter in. And my dad was like, yeah, I think that's right. And so to this day.
How long was your dad an addict?
Oh, a while.
A while?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a big, long story behind all that, too.
Well, it's sorry. Go on with your story. He was talking about, I don't want to interrupt. He was talking about the music, and your dad was resonating with what he was saying.
Yeah. So then I'll never forget it, man. It still bums me out when I think about it. It was like around Halloween or something like that, right? And he was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do because I love the Lord so much and I believe what this guy's telling me. Cory, I want you to take all my milk crates. So he had the old school wired milk crates of vinyl.
I'm already knowing where this is going, and I'm crying.
Yeah. And it made me throw them all away. All the music that I was growing up on.
Yeah.
Toss it in the trash because he couldn't do it. So fast forward years and years later.
What were you thinking as you were throwing those away?
I thought it was crazy.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know enough about Christianity at all to be able to argue something. But my logic in my head was like, this is so stupid. Like it's just music. Like, and it was around the end of the era of satanic panic. And so this was still when people were believing that if you played the record backwards, you could hear satanic messages and it would possess a person and then they would go kill themselves or do something bad.
Right.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. And I got these crates and I'm just like, the other thought I had was like, man, we're struggling right now. We could really sell these and probably get some good money.
Yeah, but then you'd be spreading Satan everywhere, right?
True.
He can't risk it.
Right. And so we throw away the albums and stuff. And years later, I find out that my dad said that part of that was that he, while he was trying to cut ties with that past of all that stuff, we had a workshop in the 2-car garage that was attached to it. So he had all of his workers there and stuff. And there was bandsaws and routers and all this stuff that were making like these shelves and cute country craftsman kind of style stuff. And my dad's working, minding his own business. And the guys were listening to the regular secular radio station. And a song comes on and it triggered a memory in my dad. And he had a flashback and he woke up on the floor and he doesn't remember what happened or anything like that.
A flashback from drug use, or was he in a okay, drug use? Okay.
So he said it triggered an acid trip. And so then he went down this thing that happened to him and he said he couldn't risk dealing with that and it was the second time that it happened within a year span, because the other time it happened, we were on a road trip and instead of getting presents, we would go see our grandma. And so we would go on this road trip, or if we got something, it was something small. And we were on a road trip, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night because we were driving through the middle of a field.
Oh, wow.
And so he had his family in this car, and he was trying to stay awake by himself. So he turned on a secular radio station that he was familiar with because all the new Christian music was so new to him, and it triggered a flashback again. And so from what I remember, that's what he told me is part of the reason why he wanted to get rid of him, is because he was afraid that it was going to cause harm. Well, interesting now.
You know what's wild though is like you can see how in his mind it makes total sense that those are demons and the devil, and all, like, because for him it kind of is.
It was registering something.
Yeah. It was taking him back to the life that he did not want to be a part of.
Yeah.
That he would probably view now as like, that was a dark time and it's dragging me back. And it's very interesting.
But now, I mean, he listened to everything. So,
he was just getting over that hurdle.
Yeah. It was still like, from what he told me, I don't know anything about drugs, but what he told me is that that's what it was. It was trapped in his spinal fluid still, and something happened that the music triggered it. And so I was like, I was like 15 at the time. I was like, okay, I trust you, Dad. I mean, you're looking out for our safety. Why would I poop on that?
Like, I'm trying to deal with puberty. I don't really get what you're saying.
I like this girl.
I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about, though, of how music reminds you of those moments.
Yeah.
And for him, that was on a very intense level, apparently.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That part I can get behind in religion quite a bit, which is like some people need something. They need it to help them. And it's different for everybody what that is, right? It's like some people might be like addicted to crocheting pillows, and that's what keeps them on the line, and that's fine, And so yeah, I could see how, even though that's like a little extreme with the music and stuff, but it's like, man, if it keeps you from using drugs and ruining your life, like and I'm not even against drug use, but it's like with everything, some people just aren't meant to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you might be addicted to lottery scratch-off tickets. You might be addicted to meth. Like, you never know. And so it's like, if that keeps you on a path, then I'm not going to shit all over that,
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I don't know if I should talk about this or not.
You don't have to.
So part of the religion experience, my faith journey, as it's called, there was an organization that was pretty big. They're no longer around. And they would put on these big youth rallies and stuff across the nation. And they would get these kids to go on mission trips with them and stuff like that and go to different countries. And then they would also take those kids years down the road. As the ministry grew, they would have these kids come and live on some land here in Texas and for like a year, and has given their life to Jesus for that year, and kind of trying to focus on what they were going to do with their life. And then in that journey, while you're there for that full year, you're sponsored by other people and all this stuff, that you get money sent over to you and to help kind of pay for housing and stuff, and you get meals and everything else. And it seemed to be a very good thing to help people out. And while I was a part of that program, I learned very quick I was a part of a cult. And I was like, because of the things that they were starting to say, it was like, something's really triggering stuff here. Like, this is weird. Like, they're talking about arranged marriages now. Like, they would pair like these people up to, okay, so he's going to be the leader of these guys, like the RA of these guys, right? And she's going to be the RA of these people. But the reason why we pair them together is because we believe they should be together. Yeah. Doing matchmaking in the name of Jesus, literally.
Right.
And so in dealing with that, like, I mean, I was basically worked in a call center where I was getting other churches to get their kids to come to this big youth thing. And so with people that I've met through there, it did help a lot of people. But it also jacked up a lot of people. Right. They went the opposite direction. And some of those people that I know now, they're on their own journey and they can choose whatever they want. But there's stuff that I've heard of other people that I'm just like, oh my gosh, like there is a lot of stuff that's not good. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, I don't know. Like,
I know what you mean. Like, I get it. It's hard to describe because it's so easy for someone to just be like, oh, it's all bullshit and blah, blah, blah. You know, it's so easy to take that pessimistic route. And it's like, again, kind of like music, it's like, it's just not for me, you know. But I'm open, like I had a coworker recently, very religious, and they do lots of trips and stuff to help people out and do all this stuff, right? Which is great. And like the most recent thing they did is I think they spent like a week, but they were going into a prison every day and talking with certain inmates who are allowed to participate in this program. And, you know, the basis of it all was just trying to treat them like humans and let them know they're not forgotten about, because a lot of them were in there for like life sentences and, 20, 30 years. And then to just listen to them and talk to them like humans and just have compassion, which you're like, man, this is all fantastic. Like, that's great. But it's also a big sales pitch the whole time for religion, right? If you just give your life over and all these things, that's like, that's the part where I'm always like, can't you just go in there without the sales pitch and just let people do the thing? But then I feel like a dick because it's like, hey, man, you're not going to prisons and talking to people. Why are you shitting all over this person for doing a nice thing, And it's just always that kind of give and take of it all where on one hand, it's still a good thing. And should I really judge it that you're doing a nice thing, even if there is a little bit of an ulterior motive, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like, it feels like when a person gives a homeless person money, but only so they can post it on their feed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's the part that I always struggle with, where I don't think there's anything wrong with doing any of that, right? Because you're just being kind to people.
Right.
And that's fantastic. Like, you should do more of that. It's like this person committed a crime and you're trying to show them like there's redemption. We don't have to always view you as a criminal. There's a way out of this where we can still humanize you. And if you do get out, you can, live a life of some kind that's just not torture every day, and it's like, that's a good thing. You should be happy that someone's willing to try that, even if they're, and it's like with your dad, it's like, if that helped him get off drugs and be, a better family man. Yeah. It's like, well, fine, go do your thing. It's just when it gets to the like Joel Osteen level where you're like, okay, people, come on.
Well, I think what's there is a scripture that talks about doing good deeds in public and doing good deeds in private. And part of that is that if you're doing them in public, like the guys on Instagram and stuff like that, or if I tell you, dude, I just did this awesome thing for this guy over here.
Yeah.
You go, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. You're so awesome. That's it. That praise, or if you want to call it, or that gratification stops there. But if you're doing it in private and nobody knows about it, then that ripple effect actually carries out more, and it means more to your believer or your creator if you believe that way.
Yeah.
So I think the same thing can go hand in hand with good works in general. Like, I think it would be more attractive if, to many, I think, especially in this day and age, if you and I started doing cool stuff and like handing out clothes and collecting clothes and all this stuff or whatever, and I'm the one that's spearheading it or whatever, and we get all these cool things done and we're doing all this stuff, and I don't mention Jesus or faith or anything at all. And then all of a sudden you're like, one day you get this bug and you're like, man, why is he doing this? This is so cool. Like, what motivated you to do that? Then I introduce you to my reason why I did it.
Right, yeah.
Because then...
That seems like a much more reasonable approach. Like, it's not you're not doing it just to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, if you happen to come my way, fine. If not, here's still a nice thing.
Yeah, you know? I mean, because you're still... Well, the other thing I think of is that the good deed is still being done. The coolness, the positivity, however you want to call it, the putting the good vibes out there, whatever you want to say, like, that is still happening. That it still needs to happen. But there's nothing that's attached to it. There's no quote-unquote baggage or whatever. And I would think that with some people, it would bring them in. Now, the other side of my brain tells me, like, the only reason why you would do that is to get them to come to church. It is to lure them in.
Yeah.
Like the teachings that I've been taught over the years and stuff that I've still kind of go, I don't know, man. Like, Mark was telling me the other day that he was doing in Greenville. There's this it's 4 old people that set up this little tent in the parking lot, and every once in a while they help distribute these this food stuffs for Meals on Wheels and stuff like that. And it's only these 4 old people, and nobody comes out and does it, and they are believers and they go to a church or whatever. And Mark decided that he was going to go help them and like hand out the stuff, and he's like, man, why don't people just do this stuff? Like, why does it, and faith attached or not, like, why can't there be more of this? And if you really think about it, you go back to even what we were talking about earlier, there is a comfort zone and a laziness with Americans in general that just, if we are asked to do, like, John Mulaney has a great bit about it where he talks about, like, as an adult, when you get older and you get, like, somebody's like, what'd you do this weekend? And you're like, nothing. I did absolutely nothing. And it was amazing. Or like whenever you commit to do something, then you're like, my favorite thing's when I get to cancel. It's like, no, I can't do it. And you just drop out, you know? So there is a selfishness that has been more and more bolstered or even brought up in the culture that we don't think outside of that. Like, the first thought that anybody has when they see somebody panhandling on the side of the road is like, there's so many jobs out there. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why can't it, like, I don't know his story.
Exactly.
I don't know what he's got going on or whatever. And I don't know if this person needs this thing to get out of this situation, you know? And I think that with my dad, it was exactly that. It was something that his story is crazy. But if you look at what he went through, and there was only one, like, he's tried almost everything. And for him to find some kind of hope or meaning in life, there was only that one thing that got him out of that. And as a result of that, like, there are kids to this day that had talked to me about kids that I know that are like, man, if it wasn't for your dad when I was in high school, I wouldn't blah, 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 and all this. And it came out of that weird religious experience in that journey. Yeah. So, I mean, yes, there is a lot of dumb stuff that happens in the church. Yeah. And there's a lot of dumb stuff that happens within the faith. But I think that I've seen, and I get where it's unattractive, but I've seen so much good come out of it too. And I will definitely say, I believe with all my heart that it isn't for everybody, because it's not the way it's designed.
I just think Like if I could have my whack at it all, right, and run it the way I want to run it, which is a very it's probably not the way you talk about it if you're following a faith. If I could run this faith. Yeah. No, but I wish more people that really follow it deeply would just kind of be able to admit like, hey, this book has been translated and manipulated to control people at different times in history. So we know a lot of it is like, this is garbage. But there are very good lessons in here that can apply to everything, right? Because I'm just one of those people where I think, who is it? Connor Oberst has a great lyric. It says something like, I think it says the Bible's blind, the Torah's deaf, the Quran is mute. If you burn them all together, you get close to the truth. Something like that. Just talking about, like, it's like, look, man, all these religions that people all keep making up, it's like, there's a good chance that you all are symbolizing the same God, whether it be an actual omnipotent being of some sort, or whether it's someone like me who just believes like, man, the universe is vast, and maybe the universe is a God of some type, and we just don't understand how to perceive all this yet, right? It's like I'm open to all those ideas. And just realizing it's like, man, get rid of all the really entrenched details. And it's like the big, broad picture is like, let's just try to all be really good to each other and do as many good things as possible. And it's like, I'm not one of those that believes you're going to like burn in a fiery hell. It's like, because I have a hard time believing that if there's a God who loves you for who you are and all your mistakes and all this stuff, they're not like a 13-year-old who's going to be like, if you don't say you love me, I will send you down there. Like, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
That's not the type of being it would be if it's all knowing and all creating, right? Talking about like the homeless guy, that being would be able to go, what's your dad's name?
David.
They'd be able to go, David clearly is on a wild path. Like, look like he made these choices and this choice. It's like, of course we're not mad at David. He turned it around, and like that thing would be understanding of every single flaw. Right. And so I think if people could get around to that kind of thinking, religion as a whole would open up a lot better, because it would be like, man, we're all just trying to figure this out. We have an idea of what it is, and we have a faith and a belief, but nobody can be sure. And we're just trying to live the best life we can,
Yeah.
Because I feel the same way about the universe, right? I think it's a little arrogant to be like, we think all of this happened exactly this way. And you're really good scientists that are vocal. They're very clear on like, these are the facts that we do know. And there's plenty to be discovered that we don't know, But anybody who's like, it absolutely was this, it's like, all right, you're just as annoying as that far religious group that I don't like that says it's absolutely that.
Yeah.
You're just on a different end of it. It's like, you guys all need to come into the middle, because it's like science could very well prove in the distant future that all of this was created by this being and this God. It could prove it.
Yeah.
I don't know how likely that is, but it could, right?
Right.
And then it could all go like, actually, guys, the universe is kind of this godlike thing, but there is no real God, but it does have an effect on all of our lives all the time. I mean, it's who knows, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we could definitely be in a simulation. and your God could be an alien teenager.
Bro, I thought it
could be.
I thought it was in the Matrix just the other day.
Dude,
and
every day I feel
kidding.
like we are now.
So I got home from work.
Uh-huh.
And then we have 4 cats, and one of the cats, it's my cat, and named him Duke. Well, it was a vote thing. We put all of our the names that we were going to name him, pulled it out, and I put in Duke Silver or something like that. From Parks. And so this cat likes to jet out anytime that the door's open. It's a fun game that he likes to play. So every once in a while, like he gets out and, we have to call him back in and he'll come in and stuff. And sometimes we just let him stay out there because he's a punk and he just takes forever to get back into the house.
Yeah.
So anyways, I get home from work and I've seen all the cats and stuff. We've been doing stuff all day and around inside the house. And all of a sudden I hear the doorknob jingle, like it's trying to like something. I hear noise at the door. And I was like, what? I was like, how long have you been out there? And like open it up. And he came from the outside, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So then I take stock of all the cats. So I'm looking, and I'm like, "Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, cool." Go back to doing chores. I'm folding laundry. We're watching TV, and all of a sudden, the door does the thing again. And I'm like, "What?" So I know nobody's gone out because all of us are accounted for and nobody's, going in and out of the house. I open the door. It's him again. And I literally felt like that scene where Neo looks and there's the black cat and then the black cat again.
Yeah.
So I was like, how in the world did this happen? So I'm just standing there in the middle of the living room.
It just glitched, man. It glitched.
Did we just glitch?
That was a quick restart.
And then all of a sudden, kid's bedroom window was open and they had it cracked while they were back in the room doing stuff.
I have all these little moments, and I like log it now. I like tell my wife I'm like simulation, and because have you ever heard of that Italian song where the guy was like talking about how Italians like any American music, and I guess to prove it, he wrote a song that sounded American, but all the lyrics were gibberish. So it's like a very American sounding song. I want to say it's in like maybe the late 60s or something, and it sounds like it's just kind of like a rock song, and it's got like horns and stuff, and it's got like a kind of a groove. And he's just like, Shamada Sida Pada, all right. Like it's just stuff like that. It's totally random nonsense. And it's like I'd never heard of this before, right? And it was a famous Italian song, I guess. And so I saw that clip, in my Instagram stream or feed or something. And I like watched the song and I'm like, that's really interesting. That's weird. And then that night I was watching the latest season of Ted Lasso, and it's one of the background songs.
What?
And it's like, what is the odd? What are the odds of this obscure song that I just heard about today being picked for this show that I just watched today? It's like we're in a fucking thing, man. That was the computer going, we need a song. He heard that song, put it in. He likes that song, right? And I mean, and there's just all these little moments like that where you're like, it's probably coincidence, but it's just too
coincidence.
It's too like. Any other song, I would have been like, okay, but
that
one is
weird,
very
man.
weird, that, and it'll just be little moments like that, like there was one morning I was singing, I don't remember, I sing a lot of stupid songs around my kid, he's 3, and there was one morning, I think I was like singing to my wife about, I don't know, like I was probably looking for a pair of jeans or something, right? Because I was saying something like, blue jeans, blue jeans, blue jeans, blue jeans, right?
Yeah.
And then I like go to Quick Trip and the cashier's got a name tag that says Jolene. And you're just like, what are the chances?
What?
What are the chances?
That's insane.
It's stuff like that where I'm just like, it's a simulation, man. But then I'm like, or the universe manifests your intentions and your beliefs, and this is just the system and how it works, and we don't get it yet. And it heard me singing the song and was like, give him a Jolene. Like,
that's
like,
hilarious.
I don't know, man, but it's
that makes sense.
It's just so strange where you're just like, how? And it's like, it's to the point where I feel weird because I want to talk to that cashier and be like, is your real name Jolene? Because I was singing Blue Jeans this morning, and it's tripping me out, man.
That's great. I would love to be there for that conversation.
And she's just like, please leave. Please leave.
You're
the
creeping
store.
me out, bro. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I stay very open-minded to all of that, because I at the root of it, I'm just very like, look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know how it all works.
Right.
It's like,
right.
Just try to be a good person. It's like if religion ultimately needs to be in my life, then it'll happen at some point. And if it doesn't, it won't happen, and just try to be good and nice to people and see where it goes. Because like, to bring it back to music, it's like, how many times did you hear a song, when you were young and you're like, that shit sucks. And then when you're like 30, you're like, I don't know, it kind of slaps.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you never know, man. Your beliefs always change. They always, morph. And
well, I think there's I have it was something that I came up with a while back, and it was random, but I think there are two thoughts. One, I think as long as you allow yourself to continue to learn, whatever level that may be, like if it's new perspective, new music, new art, new foods, new restaurants, new friends, all that stuff, if you allow yourself to do that, or if you say, no, I got it on lock, I don't need to learn anything else, well, then that's the moment you become a fool. because you're not learning anything else. You're not progressing yourself. You're not changing yourself. You're not challenging yourself. And there's nothing there that you're going to benefit from by staying stagnant, which leads me to this. Bamboo guys, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But when bamboo shoots are, when they grow in those little rings that are made, I was told that whenever that happens, there's a pop that happens. And each one of those things, it causes the plant pain, but there's growth out of that pain. So those rings are formed out of those popping moments whenever they actually sprout the new sprouts. So if you're growing, you're going to have pain. There's going to be stuff that you're going to find out that you don't like, and there's going to be stuff that you're going to find out that you thought was true that wasn't true, and there's going to be stuff, a part of your journey, that you wish you never learned at all. And there's stuff that you're going to go through that you're like, man, that really, really sucked, but I grew out of it. And because I'm growing out of that situation, I'm moving forward. And if I'm moving forward, that means that at least I'm doing that part right. And at least I can figure that out. I may not have the answers, and I might even still be wrong on this path, but that path can lead to another path, and that connection can lead to something else. And to me, I've always, when my kids are down or somebody's asking me about that stuff or advice or that point of view, is that if you're moving forward, things are good. And if you're learning things and you're progressing, you're good. And I think that if you tie it back to faith or whatever, I think the thing that I tend to lean myself on and hang my head on is that I really don't know anything. I will try to learn those things, and whatever's directing my path, I hope it's making it straight, because I'm not leaning on myself. I'm learning from those experiences. I'm learning from those things that are rooted in faith, or the things that my non-faith friends have said, or people that are just whack jobs that I know I need to stay away from. But I mean, even with the stuff that I went through with the organization here in Texas, that, man, there was a lot of stuff that I learned about myself. And it wasn't until I was out of it that I was able to look at it back, looking backwards and going, oh, okay, that makes sense here and there, and that makes sense here. I just wish I didn't waste almost a year and a half, of my life doing that, in a sense, on one level. But man, it really did. It really did teach me a lot. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that if you're allowing yourself to be teachable and allowing yourself to be searchable, and say, even challenging yourself and saying that, like, is this really what I believe? Is this what I really want to be a part of? And if it isn't, then maybe it isn't. And sometimes that answer doesn't come right away. It could be years later where you find out that it wasn't the answer. And it's not, and I mean, a friend of mine was talking about the progression of technology, and like even building the most optimal, Mac versus Mac laptops. I mean, MacBooks versus laptops, right? And the way that they developed their loading process, it took them all these different models to get to this one level to where they could actually have it. And it's the same thing with us. Why did it take so long for us to get GPS to the common man? Mm-hmm. Or why did it take, like, the technology advances that happened take so long? Well, because we didn't know it at first, and we had to go through those processes first to get to where we are next. Same thing when you're writing a song, or you're exploring those new parts of a song. If you're not exploring those things, and you're not challenging yourself in those moments, then, bro, you're just going to be locked in where you are, and you're going to be stagnant. Probably only going to like white bread and butter.
Still be using a compass.
Going into the wild, eating berries,
That's right, man.
But I mean, everybody has their path, and I think that it's one of those things that, like, if you can choose to be how fanatic you want to be about it, and I mean, that's part of your thing. And then if that's what you want to do or whatever, and then growth is important. Mm-hmm. Growth is important. Whatever means that is, like, that you go through that. I mean, even going through what I went through the last several years, it's just all the different things that I've gone through, and then to be where we are now and to see what came out of that. Mm-hmm. Bro, it sucked for a long time. And to see what came out of that now, and where things have progressed and things have gotten better, man, beautiful. I see it. I see the pain. It's like the song Beautiful. There is a grafting that happens. There is that growth that happens, and that new offshoot does take place.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that's the perfect thing to end it on, man. I really appreciate you coming on here, dude. I
thank
always have a
you
great
so
time
much.
chatting with you.
Yeah, man.
Do you like people to follow you on social media? Do you want them to follow the band instead? What do
Follow the band instead.
Yeah.
I don't really contribute much to that whole thing. You can follow me on Instagram if you want.
Remind me the band social medias, though.
Yeah, so it's Brave Little Howl, and on Instagram and on Facebook.
Yeah. Are y'all still hashtagging BLHs for you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much.
The I'm a Fan of podcast, music, comedy, and more.